The continuation of this test from topic 9 to 12. In question 23, which pollutant gas can be produced as a result of incomplete combustion? Whenever the term incomplete combustion, that is always carbon monoxide, because carbon dioxide is produced by a complete burning or a combustion of the compound hydrocarbons or even a carbon containing fuels. Fertilizers are used to provide three essential elements. What are the essential elements? NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Which two compounds provide all the three elements? So, like which combination? Ammonium nitrate. Ammonium nitrate, it will provide nitrogen, because when we write the formula for ammonium nitrate, the ammonium nitrate formula, when I write, that is ammonium nitrate, and the second one is calcium phosphate. This is a formula for calcium phosphate. So what are the nutrients it can provide? It can, because the three basic essential element, fertilizer, NPK, so it can provide N, it can provide P, but there is no K. What about the second one, ammonium nitrate and potassium sulfate? So which essential element this can provide? It can provide nitrogen and it can provide potassium, but it cannot provide phosphorus because there is no compound containing phosphorus or phosphate. Then potassium nitrate and calcium phosphate. So what are the essential element it can provide? It can provide us nitrogen, it can provide us potassium, and it can provide us phosphorus. So all the three essential nutrients NPK can be provided. So C is the right answer. So the compound which can provide all these three essential elements was a mixture of potassium nitrate and calcium phosphate, which is a property of a concentrated sulfuric acid, but not a dilute sulfuric acid. So what are the characteristics of a concentrated sulfuric acid? Concentrated sulfuric acid are dehydrating agent. If you remember, there was a reaction of a glucose, which is C6H12O6. When we add sulfuric acid is a very strong dehydrating agent, that it removes the water by a chemical reaction and produce carbon. The black solid carbon is there, plus the water molecule. So this sulfuric acid, the concentrated sulfuric acid, is known as the dehydrating. Why not dilute sulfuric acid? Because the dilute sulfuric acid already having too much water, so it cannot, or it's not useful for removing the water. That's why it is always the characteristic for a concentrated sulfuric acid.
Mister, it's not neutralizes alkalis.
Both dilute and concentrated, both can neutralize alkali. Not, it's not only for dilute, it is for, or concentrated, it is for both. In the question they're saying which is a property only for concentrated but not for dilute. Both dilute and concentrated sulfuric acid can neutralize an alkali. It produces a white PPT with barium nitrate, that's true, because both dilute and concentrated sulfuric acid, when they react with barium nitrate, produce barium sulfate, which is a white precipitate. And it reacts with metal, both dilute and concentrated sulfuric acid can react with this metal. As a result, it will give off hydrogen gas. So only the A is the property of a concentrated sulfuric acid, not for dilute. Why does a farmer put a lime calcium oxide in a soil? Calcium oxide, metal oxide, or a basic oxide? So what is the characteristic of a basic oxide? Basic oxides are used to remove the acid from the mixture. It acts as a fertilizer. No fertilizer, we provide NPK, like a compound which can either provide nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, or any one of them, or two of them, or all three. It is used to kill pests. No, it is not used to kill pests.
So, Mister, it's C.
So it makes the soil less acidic, because when we add basic oxide, the soil maybe have a pH, like example, due to continuous growing the crop, the pH of the soil might be 3. So when we add calcium oxide, metal oxide, which is a basic oxide, it will neutralize the acid. As a result, the pH will increase. Maybe it become 5, 6. So it will become less acidic. So C is the right answer.
Mr. The metal oxide is base, yes?
Basic oxide, yeah, base.
Yes, okay.
But when in exam they ask define the term base, don't say metal oxide is a base. Then write the standard definition of a base, that substance with donate proton is called a base.
Yes, okay, miss.
Which statement about all metal is correct? They are all attracted by a magnet. That is wrong. Not all. Like few metals, you don't find aluminum, copper, zinc they are weak and brittle. Not all the metals are weak and brittle. They may be used to form an alloy. So what we can do, the metal can be used to form an alloy. That is true statement. They can react with water. Not all the metal, like example, you don't find a reaction of copper, silver, or a gold or platinum with water. So they not all of them can react with water. Because in the question they're saying which is statement about all the metal is correct, like group 1, group 2, transition. Which substance produce sulfur dioxide when roasted in air? So bauxite is the ore of aluminum oxide. Cryolite, it is NaAl3F6 that is used in an extraction of aluminum, lower the melting point and concentrate the ore and use as a solvent. Hematite is the ore of iron. And zinc blende, that is a zinc sulfide. So when zinc sulfide is roasted in air, as a result, it will produce zinc oxide and sulfur dioxide. So D is the right answer. Question 29, which metal carbonate does not produce carbon dioxide when it is heated with a Bunsen burner? So when copper carbonate is heated, what it will produce? Copper oxide, carbon dioxide. Magnesium carbonate gives magnesium oxide plus carbon dioxide. Zinc carbonate gives zinc oxide plus carbon. But for sodium carbonate, they are stable to heat, does not decompose on heating, does not produce any gas. It can melt, but it cannot decompose. So C is the right answer. This is related to the properties of the metal and their compounds, the effect of heat or thermal decomposition. 2 experiments are carried out. Experiment 1, we have a copper is heated with the steam. So when you check the reactivity series, because for all the things you should understand the reactivity series. So you have potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, lead, copper, mercury, silver, gold, platinum. So what is the position of a carbon? The carbon is between aluminum and zinc. And what is the position of hydrogen? It is there between lead and copper. So the question is, which row describe what happened in experiment 1? Like whether if we mix copper with steam, so we have copper and we are mixing with steam. Can this copper displace the hydrogen? When you check the reactivity series, you can find that copper is less reactive than hydrogen. So there will be no reaction occur between them. So there will be no reaction. When you check the second one, the experiment 2, copper oxide with carbon. So the second experiment, we have copper oxide and we are reacting with carbon. So carbon is here and copper. So carbon can displace copper. As a result, it produces carbon monoxide and copper metal. So the second one, the reaction will occur. So the first experiment, there is no reaction, where the second experiment, the reaction will occur between them. So always the more reactive element displaces the less reactive element from its compound. Which 2 gases are obtained from the air by fraction distillation? So we can obtain nitrogen and oxygen by fraction distillation. Fraction distillation produce nitrogen and oxygen. In question 32, an experiment to find the percentage of oxygen in 150 cm3 of polluted air. The apparatus is left for 1 week. At this time, the volume of a gas measured is 122. What is the percentage of oxygen to nearest whole number? Look, Originally, we were having 150, and after 1 week, we are left with 122. So how much oxygen is there? What is the volume of oxygen? So it is 150 minus 122. So the volume of oxygen is 28 cm cube. So if the volume of oxygen is 28 cm cube, now what is the percentage of oxygen? The percentage of oxygen is equals to volume of oxygen in air, the sample, divided by volume of original sample air multiplied by 100. So volume of oxygen is 28. How we identify it as 28? Because after 1 week, 122 is left. So the reacted one is oxygen. So 28 divided by 115 to 100. So when we simplify this and to the nearest whole number, it will come out as 19. It will come out as about 19% of oxygen. So the 28, that is the volume of oxygen divided by 150, and that is multiplied by 100 will give 18.66, which is about the nearest whole number, 19. Two reactions X and Y produce carbon dioxide. Which type of reaction occur? Like we have a methane, CH4, a hydrocarbon methane is there. It produces carbon dioxide. So how a methane will produce a carbon dioxide? By a complete combustion. Combustion of a methane gives carbon dioxide. So this is called a combustion reaction, where calcium carbonate thermal decomposition or breakdown to produce carbon dioxide. So B is a combustion, where X is a combustion, where Y is the thermal decomposition. By the action of a heat, we break down the compound, so we call that as a thermal decomposition. The ions present in ammonium sulfates are formed from a product of a contact and a Haber process. Both of these involve a use of catalyst. Which row is correct? So for a contact process, we use vanadium pentoxide. For a Haber process, we use iron as a catalyst. So if we form ammonia is formed from, and the process, so how ammonia is formed? So the process, like example, from like we're not producing ammonia is produced by a Haber. The why first A is wrong, because this does not match. Ammonia cannot be produced by a contact process. So A is wrong. Then ammonia Haber process, but the catalyst is wrong. Catalyst is iron, not vanadium pentoxide. The third one, sulfuric acid, is produced by a contact process, and the catalyst is vanadium pentoxide, V2O5. And the ion which is correct present is a sulfate ion, so C is the right answer. Why not D? Sulfate is correct, sulfuric acid, but the process name is incorrect and the catalyst name is also incorrect. Here, the catalyst name was correct, but the process name was incorrect. So, correct answer, the sulfuric acid is prepared by a contact process by using a vanadium pentoxide, V2O5. Yeah, that's right. Then question 35, zinc is very important metal. It is extracted from its ore zinc blende, which contains zinc sulfide. Describe how zinc sulfide is converted into zinc oxide. In industrial, it is simply by roasting. Write a chemical equation. So whenever you are writing, look, equation is having 2 marks. 1 mark is for writing a correct symbol, the product and reactant, and the second is for balancing. So zinc sulfide is there. The zinc blend is zinc sulfide reacted with oxygen. As a result, what it produced? It produced zinc oxide plus sulfur dioxide. Then we write the balance equation. So this is 2, 2, this one is 3, and this one is 2. Then name a substance that is added to a furnace to reduce the zinc oxide. So both extraction of a iron or extraction of zinc, what we use a coke or a carbon as a reducing agent, or to produce a reducing agent such as carbon monoxide. Describe how zinc is removed from the furnace and collected. So zinc first it evaporated and then condensed. Because of high temperature, zinc is evaporated and then it is condensed, convert back from a vapor to a liquid state, and we remove from the furnace. Question 36, iron does not rust when it is completely coated with a zinc. When zinc is scratched, iron still does not rust. Why iron does not rust when it is completely coated with zinc? So it does not interact, iron does not interact with oxygen, or not exposed to oxygen, or zinc prevent the contact between the iron and oxygen. So you can also mention there is no contact between.
Mr. The iron is only metal that react with air in the transition elements.
No, there are other elements as well, but only for other elements what happen, even this happen for copper as well. Like maybe you have seen, if you leave copper metal for a very long time, there is a green layer is there on the
Yes.
surface. The problem with iron, what happens is when iron rusts, its strength decreases. Like it become porous material, so its strength decreases compared to other materials, other metals. Their strength, like only the surface is get rusted, and within that
Yes.
remain as a metal.
Yes, okay, Mr.
So no contact between iron and oxygen or air. That's how it prevent the iron. But explain why iron still does not rust when zinc is scratched. And see the total marks for this question. This is of 3 marks. So the points which you score, the marks first you will mention zinc is more reactive than iron. Then zinc loses electron, or iron does not lose electron, or electron transfer from zinc to iron. So the steps here, the zinc is more reactive than iron. It can be on magnesium as well. Like sometimes the same question is comparing with magnesium. So zinc is more reactive than iron. That is one thing. The second mark, zinc loses electron. The electron or oxidize, you can say, instead of iron. And as a result, the electron transfer from zinc surface to iron. These are the points you should mention whenever you're comparing the mentioning like why there is no reaction between or iron does not rust. Describe how oxides of nitrogen are formed. So how these oxides of nitrogen are formed? That nitrogen and oxygen from air react at high temperature inside the car engine, result in a formation of oxides of nitrogen. So nitrogen instead of mentioning a combustion, you should specify that it is, because main thing is nitrogen does not react at a low temperature. So there should be a very high temperature or electrical discharge or spark is there. So nitrogen and oxygen from the air, they're not from the fuel, react inside the engine, inside the car engine at high temperature or due to high temperature. Or electrical spark, you can also mention. Describe how catalytic converter reduce the emission of these 3 pollutants. So how these 3 pollutants are their emission, it's of 4 marks. So what happened? The carbon monoxide is oxidized to carbon dioxide. Oxides of nitrogen are reduced to nitrogen gas, and hydrocarbon are burned completely to give off carbon dioxide and water. So the points, the 4 marks, number 1, the carbon monoxide is oxidized to carbon dioxide. That is one thing. Then oxides of nitrogen are reduced to nitrogen gas, and then unburned hydrocarbon burn completely to give carbon dioxide and water. Then other atmospheric pollutants are there, such as lead compounds are added to leaded petrol. Explain why lead compounds are harmful. So lead compounds, why they? Because lead compounds can damage the nervous system or damage the brain. So why they are harmful? Because the lead compounds, when a person inhale, can damage the brain. The next part.
Mister, it will damage the brain immediately or after a
No,
long
no,
time?
no, slowly intake. It's not like instant. It is slowly intake, like inhaling the compounds which contain lead can damage the brain.
Yes,
Sulfuric
okay,
acid
sir.
is produced by a contact process. The steps are there. The common source of a sulfur, like from where we can get the sulfur, fossil fuel which contains sulfur. So fossil fuel mainly. Then describe step 2, giving a reaction condition and a chemical equation. The rate and the yield is not required. So step 2 is conversion of sulfur dioxide to sulfur trioxide. So that is a reversible reaction and it's of 5 marks. So what are the distribution, how the marks are distributed? 1 mark is for mentioning reaction is reversible. So 2 to 3 atmosphere vanadium pentoxide catalyst, and then the final marks for writing that equation. So these are the reaction conditions. Step 3, we have to complete an equation. So sulfuric acid mixed with sulfur trioxide, as a result, what it produced oleum. So H2, S2 and O7, that is oleum. Dilute sulfuric acid is a typical acid. 3 observation: when copper, look, copper carbonate, any metal carbonate react with acid, it will give salt, water and carbon dioxide. So copper carbonate is there. copper carbonate mixed with sulfuric acid, produce copper sulfate. Copper sulfate is a blue solution. Carbon dioxide bubbles will be there and water. So what are the three observations? We'll observe that the solid dissolve.
Hydrogen bubbles off and
No, not hydrogen, carbon dioxide. Because
sorry,
carbonate.
oxide.
And when you want to write an observation, you don't specify the name of a compound. You just simply mention what you will see. So the solid dissolve, that is one thing. The second thing is we'll see bubbles because of the carbon dioxide. And the third thing, what we'll observe is the blue solution formed because of copper sulfate.
Mister, it will give water, salt, and carbon dioxide.
Yeah. It will give salt, water, and carbon dioxide. So copper sulfate, salt is there, plus water, H2O plus CO2 carbon dioxide. So name the three products. You have to write these three products: copper sulfate plus carbon dioxide plus water. Then concentrated sulfuric acid has a different properties to dilute. So when concentrated sulfuric acid is added to a glucose, what we'll observe a black solid, which is a carbon. And what type of a reaction is this? This is called a dehydration reaction. When a water molecule is removed from the substance, we call dehydration. Then the diagram shows a part of a carbon cycle. This includes some of the processes which determine the percentage of carbon dioxide in atmosphere. Combustion, photosynthesis, and respiration. Carbon dioxide is one of a greenhouse gas. Name another greenhouse gas. So that is methane, correct? So methane is another greenhouse gas which contribute to global warming or a climate change, and it is having a greater greenhouse factor compared to carbon dioxide. Explain in terms of explain the term respiration and how this process increase the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So what is the respiration? Basically, the definition of a respiration is when living cells produce energy by carbohydrates or glucose or from food.
Yes, or Mister, breaking down food to release energy from it.
Yeah, that's called that's called respiration. And because it is releasing carbon dioxide, that's why the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere increases. So when you mention living organism, one mark is for mentioning living organisms such as plants or animals. One mark is for mentioning only living organism or a cell. The second mark produce energy from food. And the third mark give off carbon dioxide. So one mark for mentioning living organism, animals, or plants, anything. Produce energy from food. And gives carbon dioxide. The second, explain why the combustion of a waste crop material should not alter. Like when we burn the crops, it does not alter the amount of carbon dioxide. What is the reason? Because so basically what happened, why the combustion of a crops does not contribute to alter the change in the amount of carbon dioxide? Because when we grow the crops, when we grow the plants, they absorb carbon dioxide. And when we burn them, they release same amount of carbon dioxide. So the answer for this one, why the combustion of a waste crop material should not alter the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So when the crops grow, it take CO2 from the atmosphere or remove CO2. And when it burned, it released the same amount of carbon dioxide. So the overall change is same. In 1960, the percentage of a carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was only 0.03%. 0.032, and in 2008 it is about 0.038. So just an explanation for increase. So what is the reason why there is an increase in the amount of a carbon dioxide? Because we are cutting the lot of deforestation is done nowadays. Like we are cutting the trees, and we are using or increase use of the fossil fuel is also too high as compared to in 1960. That's why it leads to an increase in production of a carbon dioxide. So you can mention use of the fossil fuel or deforestation leads to increase in amount of a carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Then describe a chemical test which shows the presence of a water. How we can test how we can check the presence of a water. So it's up to you. You can add anhydrous. Don't forget to mention anhydrous. Like some of the students in the test only mention cobalt chloride or copper sulfate, but you should mention anhydrous, either cobalt chloride or copper sulfate. So what is the color change? If it was anhydrous copper sulfate, it will turn from white to blue. How you could show that the sample of a water is pure? So we can, whenever we want to check the purity, we'll check the boiling point. It will boil at 100. Or you can also use cobalt chloride paper. It will turn from blue to pink if you are using. Describe how water is treated before it's supplied to home. So first what we do, we will filter the water to remove insoluble impurities, and then we do chlorination. First is filtration, the second one is chlorination. Then say two industrial uses of the water. In industry, what are the uses of the water? So we can use the water like textile industry is using water. Water can be used as a coolant to cool down, or water can be used as a solvent. So you can mention as a coolant to cool down the systems, as a coolant, and as a solvent to dissolve most of the constituent. In question 41, the element of group 7 are known as a halogen or salt former. So remember, always the more reactive metal displaces the less reactive. So if chlorine is reacting with potassium iodide, will it react? Yes, it will, because chlorine is more reactive. If bromine is reacting with potassium chloride, it won't react. If bromine is reacting with potassium iodide, it will react. And if iodine is reacting with potassium chloride or potassium bromide, so it won't react. Then write a chemical equation for a reaction between chlorine and potassium bromide. The chemical equation, you should write it correct symbols. So reaction between chlorine. Chlorine is a non-metal, exists as a diatomic molecule. Potassium bromide, potassium is group 1 plus 1 and bromine is group 7 minus 1. So potassium bromide is KBr. First, you complete a react product. So chlorine will displace this potassium, bromine. It will produce potassium chloride plus bromine molecule. And as a result, the balance equation 2 here and 2 this one. Then astatine is at the bottom of a group 7. Use your knowledge of the properties, predict the physical state. So we have fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, astatine. So physical state, fluorine is a gas, liquid, solid. So astatine should be solid at room temperature. And write a chemical equation for a reaction between sodium and astatine. So the chemical equation, sodium is a metal, so exists as an atom Na. Astatine is a non-metal, exists as a diatomic molecule. When they react, what is the compound? Sodium astatite will be formed. and the sodium is group 1 and astatine is group 7. So the compound will be NaAT. And then balance equation, 2 astatine, so we put 2 for astatine, and 2 sodium, so we put 2 for sodium. So this is a balance equation for a reaction between sodium and astatine. 1 mark is for completing an equation and 1 mark is for balancing. So this was discussion, the tests from chapter 9 to 12.